What's up everyone, Anup here, and today we are going to be programming some drums to a rough demo. This is going to be a rough demo of one of my band's projects called Dearest. It's off of our next EP. We're kind of in the middle of writing at the moment, and huge thanks to the guys for letting me use this for the video. Let's get into it. So there's a couple of things that I kind of like to just think about when programming drums, and I'm going to cover that as we move through this. You'll notice I'm going to work in like smaller chunks, and then we just all of a sudden have the bigger chunk. So you notice that I'm only working with like a couple bars at a time and explaining stuff. We will be filling everything out pretty fast as we move through. Let's listen to this. So this is going to be like, I guess, half a verse into a chorus into a heavy riff. And I say half a verse because the front half of this verse we're not really going to be working with too much. We're going to just kind of focus on this second half going into the chorus just for the sake of keeping this video relatively short. All right. So this is the front half of the verse. Chorus. Let's get into it. So first things first, I like to start with the hands. I like to establish what cymbal I'm going to be writing on and what the snare placement is going to be. I think with just those two elements for the entire process of writing drums for anything, you can already kind of start to paint the picture, and it's going to establish the vibe of what you're going for just with that. So for this verse, I know I want to be on a closed hat. That's an open hat. There you go. And we're going to start with quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want the snare to be on the 3. So 1, 2, snare, 4. 1, 2, snare, 4. I'm just going to duplicate that once more. So yeah, that's sick. I'm going to mute the click really quickly. All right. Now I know I want eighth notes on the hi-hats, but the inside eighth notes, the ands, I want those to be way less in velocity, nowhere near as obvious. And I'm going to put them on a stick tip. Maybe even less than that. Yeah, that's cool. This is going to be really sick because when, everything is compressed later, a lot of those notes will kind of poke out here and there. That's the whole idea with keeping them a super low velocity. I don't really want them to be that obvious. I want them to kind of like dip in and out, if that makes sense. Cool. Just with this already, we already have a pretty sweet kind of groove that we can hear. Now the guitars here are doing something very busy, and I'm going to kind of treat the guitars here almost as like a production layer. Like I don't want to follow it literally. It's really busy, and this part is so like ominous and kind of open and airy. I want to keep that vibe on the drums so that there's just space for more production and vocals. That's really important, right? Because there's definitely going to be vocals on this. So I don't really want to go instead, I'm going to use the kicks to kind of highlight the pushes of what the guitars are doing. So all right, cool. I got it. Give me 1 second. Dun dun bap boom 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 bap boom boom bap boom boom boom, or bap boom boom. Let's do bap boom boom first. All right. Yeah, that's sick. All right. Let's start kind of embellishing this a little bit, all right? Because I know the guitars in this verse, they pretty much stick to that rhythm. So we're not going to be straying too far away from this core pattern, right? Let's put in some ghost notes. Yeah, because prog metal. Gotta have ghost notes in prog metal, or is it really prog metal without them? Yeah, cool. Now let's duplicate that. All right, right here, I'm going to actually change this to be 3 kicks because the guitars, excuse me, they go lower, and I kind of want to emphasize that on the kicks, just for that one little tiny thing. Yeah, that's cool. And who knows, maybe later, you know, on the bass guitar or something, we'll emphasize those notes even further. Let's go ahead and duplicate that, and let's listen to what we have. All right, cool. Right there we have a chord change. So we're just going to duplicate this pattern once more because I know I want that there. Right here, we got to kind of acknowledge the chord change without making a huge statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little accent in 2 spots. All right, let's listen to what I just did. Yeah, that's cool. And I'm gonna get rid of this ghost note because I was just thinking about it in my head, and on my kit, hi-hats here, splashes above the hi-hat for me to then and also hit like a ghost note in between that and coming back to the snare for the 3. I don't know, it just doesn't feel comfortable, so I'm just gonna get rid of that ghost note. Tiny little detail that I probably didn't need to explain that much, but hey, here we are. Yeah, cool. All right, let's go ahead and duplicate that. Whoa, moving everywhere with this mouse. So right here, before this chorus, all right, cool. We're gonna come back to this little transition in this section, but more importantly, I want to move to an open hats right before the chorus. So let's listen to that. Yeah, sweet. All right, that's a really good vibe. And then I'm just gonna delete that. All right, again, I'm gonna come back to this because I wanna talk about something else that's really cool with drums that we can do. Let's kind of have the same approach for the chorus really quickly, and then we'll come back to this section. Same thing for the chorus. I wanna start on the hands and work my way down to the feet. So I know, for the chorus, I know I wanna ride on the right crash, and I still want that quarter note pulse. And I also know I wanna keep the snare on the 3. So nothing is really changing with, I guess, the overall backbeat that we're doing. Sweet. All right. Now let's fill in some kicks. Really just gonna kind of highlight what the guitar does here for the most part. Sweet. Oh. Excuse me. And then on the downbeat, I'm just going to add a left crash because going into the chorus, I want to make sure I'm like, bam. Did you get that? Bam. So, bam. All right. Let's continue this hand pattern. And you can see throughout, you know, it's very simple for a section like this that doesn't repeat, you know, the verse. Take a look at the phrasing for the verse. It kind of repeats in this chunk right here for the most part with the kicks and snares. By just working with 1, 2, snare 4, 1, 2, snare 4, we were able to kind of write our pattern and do some embellishments and then duplicate that a whole bunch and then kind of adjust as we move along. For the chorus, it's a little bit more because it doesn't repeat just in that short amount of time. So we kind of have to spend a little bit more time writing the pattern. But then after here, it's going to repeat, which you'll see in a second. So let's keep doing this. So, again. And now we can start to embellish this because I think it's just going to repeat. So yeah, okay, it just pretty much repeats for the most part. So let's kind of add some ghost notes here and some other smaller embellishments. Bring those down just a tiny bit. Yeah, sweet. All right. Keep going on this track just a little bit more. We're almost there. Sweet. Now we can just repeat this because I think it should just work over the second half mostly. All right, let's add a couple things in the second half because I want it to kind of just build a little bit. So let's change this to a kick. Let's change this to a snare. Yeah, that's really cool. Let's repeat all of that. Excuse me, hold on. And during this time, maybe we can just kind of like add some extra cymbal accents for this part. So I don't know. Let's get rid of those. I feel like over the years, I'm just so much more into like bonehead drums. Simpler is just better most of the times. And it's kind of funny. In the past few months, I feel like I've had people request that I complicate the drums more when writing for whatever it is, session work. Or I think there was another Dearest song where one of the guitar players asked me to go crazier. And I was like, look, I just don't want to do that stuff anymore. Anyways, at the end of the day, I still just really like listening to what's happening and writing for the song mostly, you know. I'm not really too interested in trying to make such a big statement on the drums anymore. But yeah, maybe cymbal accents could work. But anyways, let's keep going. We could add another kick right there. Let's change this to another snare. Add another kick here. Back to do. Now I'm just going off on a tangent here, not saying anything, but I have some ideas in my head, so give me a second and I'll explain it. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, sorry for going silent there. Basically, I repeated this groove again throughout the chorus. I wanted to keep it pretty, you know, straightforward for the most part. But then as we kind of move through the chorus, we start to kind of add just a little bit more. Nothing too crazy, but just some extra kicks, you know. And then I kind of repeat the same blat and boo as like the button here on the snare. And then again here. And then towards the end here, I really wanted kind of like a busy fill because I know there's a pause coming up and then it just hits. So I wanted to make sure that the drums kind of built a little bit of tension and made that pause like even more impactful so that when we do get into the heavy riff, it's like, whoa, sweet. Speaking of tension, let's go back to that other part that I said I would come back to. Really quickly decrease the velocities here. Yeah. That's another tiny detail. With these kicks here, like right before these heavy hits, realistically on the drums when I'm playing this, I'm not going to be hitting every hit full velocity. So I like kind of incorporating a few of these dynamics with the kick drums. You can see kind of like lesser velocity here, got another one here and here. And I think kind of decreasing the velocity on the kick pickup directly before like a heavy downbeat, that can kind of add more to that downbeat. As I was saying, we kind of created some tension here towards the end of the chorus right before this stop. Yeah, that's cool. Let's go back and let's do the same before the chorus. All right, so let's listen to this. All right, cool. So I'm just gonna get rid of this button on the drums because the guitars are doing something really cool here. So, all right, I wanna accent that on drums 100%. And what I also wanna do is I wanna make sure this is kind of like a hectic fill and we kind of come back in on the blat chorus. All right, so. This is like a super basic quad fill, we call it on the drums. Is that a quad fill? Yeah, I guess that is. Basically, the sticking chord is just right, left, kick, kick. All right, let's add a little flam. Yeah, that's cool. And you noticed how I kind of programmed my flam here. We do have a flam articulation on this library, but I kind of just prefer programming my flams because I can adjust the thickness of them as we go. And certain hits might require a skinnier flam and certain hits might require like a fatter flam. So I just like programming that stuff. It's super easy to do. Yeah, all right, so one more time. Yeah, that's cool. All right, now we have to kind of build into this fill a little bit, you know, because right now it's just such a kind of simpler groove, just all of a sudden going into the drum show. Let's make it busy. Let's take it to the NAMM show. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this to the NAMM show right now. All right, sweet. So basically the whole thing there is I didn't want to just have a simple drum groove, then all of a sudden crazy fill into the chorus, right? We kind of added some ghost notes, some faster kicks. We're kind of playing around with the 16th note permutation now to just kind of hint that, all right, we're going into something, you know, so get ready. Yeah. That's pretty smooth. I like that. I could probably spend so much more time just in this one section. You know, for the final version, I know I will. At least for now, I know like, okay, I want something kind of subtle, busy, but I want it to be nice and smooth and kind of feel like it just flows and right? So this kind of establishes that idea pretty well for now. Moving onwards, we got the last little heavy riff. So I like that little pause that it comes on the 1, 2. All right, so first things first, I know we're gonna just put a huge hit there, so I'm just gonna program that in, but more importantly, let's really quickly fill out the hands. So. All right, so already with the hands, I can hear that we're not going to really be repeating the pattern until here. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the hands up until then, because we have to write all the kicks in, and then we can kind of duplicate that entire section and embellish and all that kind of stuff, right? Cool. Just going to be following the guitars literally here. Ba-dun, dun, dun, dun. Ah. Ooh. Sweet. Let's listen to that. All right, so it's going to repeat. Okay, so the pattern repeats on the guitars. It goes into the pattern slightly different each time and has like a slightly different button, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this because it's just going to make our lives easier. And we're going to go with 2 hits here on the cymbals, but then 3 kicks underneath. So. Let's keep it straight. Again, bonehead. I'll just keep this super straight. Yeah, cool. So it just repeats again, and this time we just have to delete a kick drum and then we're just going to go ahead and repeat the pattern once more. Now we need 3 kicks underneath. And here's a little other cool example I want to cover. So right here we have a snare. That's the pattern right here on the drums. And it's going into 2 crash hits on the next downbeat. So on the kit, realistically, that's what I'm doing, right? So and I have to move the left hand immediately to the left crash after that. So it's doable. I don't really know how comfortable that would be. So in this case, I'll leave it because I could probably play that. But I'll give you an example of like a fill right here where I probably wouldn't do that, all right? Yeah, okay, this is perfect. So right there, I have these last 2 16th notes on the snare drum, and then my left hand has to move up to the left crash to hit a heavy hit to really emphasize that next downbeat, right? So right here is where I would, in the program drums, take out one of the crash hits so that my right hand is the only one playing. So my right hand is going to cross over and play that left crash. So let's listen to this. Again, it's just one of those tiny details. As a drummer myself, you know, and eventually I am going to have to record this on the drums. I don't really like programming stuff that's like too uncomfortable for me to play. And I also want it to be playable, like realistic, you know, because I do have to actually play it. I don't know. I think I hyper-focus sometimes too much on those details, but that's just my style and, you know, what I prefer to do. Anyways, there's a quick example of where I would just kind of pay attention to what the drums are doing and where the hands have to end up after the fill. I kind of forced this example. If it came up more organically as we were writing, I think those tiny details really make like a big difference in making the drums just feel more real and more final, you know, at the program stage at least. Cool. Let's listen to, oh wait, we still have one more section. I'm sorry. All right, cool. So here we are just gonna scrap all of this and we're gonna like highlight all of those hits on the guitar. I'm not going to be writing for that section afterwards, but I want to make sure that the drums really kind of just follow the guitars there literally, because again, it's kind of creating that tension. It's going into the next part, which again, is just going to be a backbeat. I can program a little bit of it just so we can hear how it sounds. So let's see. Cool. All right. Right here on these stabs, I'm going to move the snare over just a little bit to create the tiniest bit of flamming with the kick. Yeah, kind of makes it just sound a little bit fatter in my opinion. And then we're going to add some ghost notes. We're just going to turn this into a fill because I want to really kind of add some tension before going to that next part. So yeah, that's cool. And then right here, we'll just follow the guitars back again. Bam, boom, bam. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, cool. So just so we can hear how this kind of builds a little bit of tension in this section, I'm just going to program a little bit of the next part. I'm not really going to talk too much through it, just going to do it so that we can hear it. Ugh. Actually, what's really cool about this is... Oh, that's actually really cool. I didn't even realize this happened. Been listening to this demo for a couple weeks now. That's just the verse pattern. That's pretty sweet. I'm an idiot. Anyways, back to this. We kind of created that tension here. I wanted to break up this groove a little bit because we're just kind of going into another groove, right? So I feel like this musically is going to have to come from the vocals and production and kind of what we decide to do over top to keep the flow happening in the song. So it's not just kind of like riff after riff, right? So on the drums, we can kind of do our part, if that makes sense, and keep that kind of flow moving by doing things like this where we kind of break it up and we're just back into another groove. I personally like a lot of groove anyways in a song, so this doesn't really bother me that there's just another riff after this. It's still nice to break things up, so let's listen to it. Yeah, that's sick. Okay, so let's listen to everything that we have from the top. Right off the bat, I kind of noticed a couple areas I would absolutely go back and touch up. There's stuff in the chorus, might add another kick and kind of change up some of the button fills that I have going on just so that it's not always the same. Like for example, I overuse this a lot. And then I have another here. And I also have it here. And then, it's those types of little details that after doing one large pass of drums, I will absolutely go back, listen to everything and just be like, all right, how can I kind of make things evolve more on the drums, keep things interesting and keep the momentum moving forward. And just to demonstrate the hands thing, I want to kind of just show you how quick we can change the vibe of a part with just the hands. So if I went here and instead of that previous groove we programmed, I just put a snare and a crash on every quarter. That's actually kind of sick. Here's another example. We can go cut time. So kind of like a two-step vibe. Point being with that is you can just with the hands, just kind of messing with the hands and figuring out where you want the cymbals to fall, where you want the snare to fall. You can change the vibe of pretty much any part on just the drums. But yeah, that's all I got for you. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Also, make sure to sign up to our mailing list at rsdrums.com. You'll get some free MIDI grooves and drum samples just for signing up. And that's it. Thanks for watching.